Cruise news time. Well, we're hearing the first reports of cases on Carnival cruise ships, and we've got more cruise lines that are adding testing and masking to their protocol. Plus, are you flying into the Bahamas? We got a pile of cruise news. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to La Lido Loca. I'm your host, Tony, here with the latest cruise news updates. Well, it's been an interesting 24 hours. It really kicked off yesterday as Carnival started alerting its customers that there would be new pre-cruise testing requirements and new indoor masking requirements, all aimed at vaccinated people. Pre-cruise testing at the expense of the customer. Let's just say that it was a shock. The question, of course, is why is this happening now? We know that there is an increase in cases in the United States because of the Delta variant, but was there some other reason that the cruise line started to adjust? And then late last night, we had breaking cruise news from Carnival that there are positive cases on one of their cruise ships. I've got that. I've got more cruise news. Before we get into all of that, let me quickly thank the sponsor of today's show, Surfshark VPN. Really an important tool for people that are cruising right now. Surfshark VPN is a tool I've used a lot just in these last few weeks of cruising. VPN, it's a way to keep your information protected, your identity protected while you are using Wi-Fi out in the wild. It's not like being at home when you're on a cruise ship. You're using public Wi-Fi at hotels, public Wi-Fi on cruise ships, and it's not the most safe place to be in cyberspace. And so VPN, Virtual Private Network, it allows you to send information over the internet in an encrypted fashion where it stays away from the prying eyes of hackers and ne'er-do-wells and folks like that. It's especially helpful for me while I'm cruising. I need to connect to things, and the things that I connect to, they need to think that I'm in the United States. And so while I'm out here in the Bahamas, sometimes when I connect to my favorite website, it's like, oh, is this really you? You're not usually in the Bahamas. Well, if I fire up the VPN and I connect to a server in the US and then begin my internet online activity, then it looks like I'm in the US. So if you want both protection and freedom online, click the link below in the description and use the promo code LALIDOLOCA for 83% off of Surfshark plus 3 free months. Thanks again, Surfshark VPN. Let's jump into this cruise news. First story up, there are cases of COVID on the Carnival Vista. Carnival released a statement that there are people on the Carnival Vista that have tested positive for the virus. They did not give a specific number. They just said there were a small amount of cases. Of course, their health protocols kicked in. These people are being taken care of, isolated. But in response to these cases on the Vista, the mask mandate that is going into effect on the 7th for all Carnival ships went into effect immediately on the Carnival Vista. Now, let me remind you of the masking protocols. It is strongly suggested that vaccinated guests wear masks indoors. That's the first part of the protocol. The second part is masks will be required in certain areas when you're in line for the MDR, when you're in line for the buffet, when you are in elevators, when you are in the entertainment venues, really anywhere where people are congregating, they're going to have you put on a face mask. So it's interesting in the policy that they put out. There's some language that says strongly recommended. There's some language that says required. And so I think a lot of this will play out on the cruise ship. Hopefully, as we go forward, that policy is more defined. Because I could imagine if you just take the list of the places that are listed under the required, and then you could have some sort of beef if you're in a strongly suggested area and they tell you to mask up and you're like, yeah, well, I'm not taking your suggestion. It's a slippery slope. Let me just say that. Like, I kind of think that it would have been better if it would have just said required indoors, because again, we have a little bit. But Carnival's not the only place. The other big cruise news that came out after Carnival announced that yesterday is that the other Carnival brands are also going to adopt the same policy. Holland America and Princess specifically. Let me address that in two ways. Both of them have added a pre-cruise testing protocol requirement. The pre-cruise testing requirement, you have to go 72 hours prior to your cruise. It can't be any longer than that. It has to be within 72 hours. You have have to get an antigen test or a PCR test. The PCR test is the longer test to get results. The antigen test is what's considered the rapid test. So if you're going on these cruises, you either have to get a PCR test or an antigen test, and you have to have a negative result, and you have to take that negative result with you to the cruise terminal along with your proof of vaccination. And so this is true for Carnival. This is true for Holland America. This is true for Princess. These protocols will be taking effect. I know Carnival's take effect on the 14th of August. So right there, I've got a couple cruises that are coming into play. I'll be on the Mardi Gras on August the 21st. I'll be on the Majestic Princess on September the 12th. And so now part of my pre-cruise activity will be to get a COVID test. My lovely wife Jenny at home did some checking. She found some for about $130 each. We're still trying to look and see if there's anything cheaper, but these are tests for vaccinated people. So if you're vaccinated, you have to have that test prior to going to the cruise port. And then Princess and Holland America also adding the mask language to their health protocols. Let me share with you exactly what the words are for the protocols on Princess, and that way you'll see what I'm talking about when it comes to the strongly recommended versus the required. So this is under the mask and physical distancing, and this is almost the same exact wording as on Carnival and Holland America. We strongly encourage guests to wear a face mask when in public spaces indoors. All guests will be required to wear a face mask with no exception in elevators and in designated indoor entertainment areas, all retail shops, in the casino except when eating or drinking. Guests will also be required to wear a face mask prior to being seated in our main dining rooms and in the buffet area, and occasionally in other designated areas where large number of guests may congregate. As a reminder, masks are required during embark and debark in the terminal, and masks should also be worn during the debarkation process on board. So again, it's clear in some aspects and not clear in others. It does sound like there will be some places on the inside of cruise ships that you will be required to wear a mask, and then some places where maybe not. And so that's going to be interesting how that plays out. And I will be able to give you firsthand knowledge of that in a couple weeks when I get on the Carnival Mardi Gras. Honestly, the biggest reason that I'm cruising right now is so that I can give you guys a firsthand look at what it's like on cruise ships. I'm currently on MSC. The protocol here is a little different. They're doing testing for all passengers at the embarkation point. But I did do a video that kind of details the embarkation, the masking, spots for vaccinated only people. Make sure you check that video out if you haven't seen it. I will link it above. And let me quickly invite you to subscribe. If you like to stay up to date with everything that's going on in cruising, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. That way you don't miss out on any of our episodes. All right, so let's move on. Let's put a bow on that. Just the quick wrapper. You got Carnival, Holland America, Princess, all adding a testing requirement, all adding a masking requirement in response to positive cases amongst vaccinated people on land and on cruise ships. It would not surprise me if we see more cruise lines doing this. Royal Caribbean also has added a testing component for their cruises, and of course they've already had the masking inside. So the playing field is starting to level out. Even though cruises are going with 95%, 98% vaccinated guests, we're now starting to see a testing component on most cruise lines, and we're also starting to see a masking component indoor on most cruise lines. So even though they were competing a little bit on health protocols, it seems like the virus is leveling the field and everybody is going to a more restrictive cruise. Now, I've got one more cruise news story about the Bahamas, and then I've got some commentary about cruising in general going forward. I would invite you to stay until the end because I would love your feedback on this commentary that I have. But the Bahamas story is there was a time to get into the Bahamas where you had to have a negative COVID test to get into the Bahamas, part of the Bahamas Health Visa. As the vaccination numbers went up, they removed that. And so when I went to the Bahamas in June to cruise on Royal Caribbean, I did not have to have a negative COVID test to get in the Bahamas as part of my health visa because I was a vaccinated person. That was not a requirement. So now again, since the rise of positive cases amongst vaccinated people, they are now returning back to requiring travelers that are coming into the Bahamas to get a negative test before they come to the Bahamas. And so now you can imagine if you're going to cruise on Royal Caribbean's Adventure of the Seas out of Nassau, you have to get a negative test to get into the Bahamas. You also have to have a negative test to get on that cruise ship. If you time it right, you could probably use the same test, but it's another level of testing. Now, if you're just cruising to the Bahamas, if it is a port stop for you, you do not have to have a test. Most cruise lines, before you can get off in the Bahamas, you have to show proof of vaccination. And so, but yeah, another layer of testing in place for those traveling to the Bahamas. And then finally, a little commentary on the response to these new protocols being put in place. And look, if you want to put your hand on the pulse of what's going on in cruising, there's no better place to do it than in the comment section of your favorite cruise tubers videos. It's interesting because you really do get a sense of how people are feeling in response to that story yesterday about Carnival adding the masking and adding the testing. There are a lot of people that said, look, I'm just going to cancel my cruise. And you can do that. This is what I understand with these changes in the protocols. You can call Carnival, you can get canceled, you can get your money moved around. I believe you can get it refunded. You got to work with Carnival, your travel professional, for that. But yeah, a lot of people said, look, I'm just not going to do it. This was not my expectation. I am not going to cruise with a mask on. I think that is fair. And again, it proves the point that I've been saying for a while, that the restart of cruising is going to be tumultuous. It's not going to be for everybody. It's going to be chaotic. Now, I'm here on a cruise ship where I have to wear a mask, where I had to take a test to get on this cruise ship. And look, I'm here to tell you, I've had a great cruise. I've not really been hindered by the need to wear a mask. You don't have to wear a mask outside. You really just have to wear a mask on the indoor public spaces. You don't have to wear a mask in your cabin. You don't have to wear a mask when you're eating. You don't have to wear a mask when you're swimming. And so overall, the cruise experience has been a good one for me. I would have liked it better, like if my wife was here, and that, you know, I think we would have had a really nice, great cruise together, and we wouldn't have been impacted too greatly by the protocols. Probably the biggest pain point of this cruise was the 3-hour embarkation, and an hour plus of that embarkation was getting the test and waiting for the test results. So I can understand from a logistics perspective why the cruise lines are pushing that out before the cruise. I don't like the fact that they're pushing the cost of that onto the customer. I do understand that the cruise lines are in a tough situation, trying to recover their business, trying to make it. They've lost tons of money over the last 16 months. But I think the more that you burden the consumer, hey, go get a test, hey, go spend this extra money, I think it's really going to push people away. Again, I'm going to continue to do it, but this is what I do. I understand that everybody's not in the same circumstance as me, and not everybody has the same tolerance that I do for all of this change. And so it opens up an interesting conversation. It's a conversation I think we should continue in the comments. I have a poll running on the community tab right now. If you go to our YouTube page, you look for community, you'll see a poll. And basically, I'm just trying to gauge how many people will continue cruising under this testing and masking protocol, how many people won't. And there's a depends answer in case there's some extenuating circumstance. If you could, please go over and sound off on that poll. I think that would make for interesting conversations going forward. But yeah, let's just open up the conversation. Will you cruise like this? Is this too much? Have you canceled your cruises? How do you feel now that you've had 24 hours to think about it? What do you think about all of this? Hey, thank you so much for checking out the show today. Please show your support. It helps me out so greatly. If you hit the like button, or if you just hated it or you hate me, hit the dislike button. It all counts. It's all helpful. And yeah, we'll do this again tomorrow. Tony with La Lido Loca, the last day of my cruise. See you on the Lido. Bye.